Triambakam yajamahe sugantim pushtivardhanam urvarukamiva bandhanam mrityurmukshyamamritat
Hi, this is Amalia Eon Karis.
Hey everyone, it's Satya, and you're listening to Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda.
Sugantim pushtivardhanam urvarukamiva bandhanam mrityurmukshyamamritat
Welcome back to our show. This is Satya, and I'm here with Amalia. Hey, Amalia.
Hello.
So the other day, when we were speaking offline, and we were talking about sexual imprints. I just love that subject. So I think that's a good place to start today.
Okay. What should we jump in about the sexual imprints? Maybe what they are and
Yeah, that sounds good. There's so many places we can go with it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I say the word sexual imprint, what I'm referring to is like that first experience of orgasm that we have in our lifetime, and how whatever that was, like whatever way that you had that first experience of your first orgasm, that's what kind of hooks us up to the future orgasms and the future desire for orgasm. And I think it gets overlooked a lot in our adult life, or people don't really often sit and reflect about their very first sexual experience and what a strong impact it has for the rest of our sexual relations moving forward.
Right. So, I mean, well, on the simplest thing, I mean, let's say that somebody's first sexual experience wasn't good, or let's say it was abusive, or let's say rape. They may attract somebody when they're older that may lack empathy, or maybe a sociopath, or they might get with somebody who turns out to be abusive in that way without even realizing it. But anyway.
Oh, exactly. That's exactly what happens. So like, so many children are abused. Like the numbers are staggering. I don't have the statistics, but I can speak from my own practice and working with people and my own experience of my childhood and the people I know and the kids I grew up with. Like all the children that I was best friends with growing up, we were all being sexually abused in some way, like some sort of molestation going on, if not full blown, sexualization of some level, like some more extreme than others.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've worked with my clients and I do regressions and things like that, and I've taken people back and time and time again, and it was staggering to me how many of us have had these childhood experiences of some sort of molestation or rape. And what happens is that, as I see the systems, I'm looking at the energetic system and grid of a body when I'm working on it. So I'm seeing where all of the nadis, the light pathways in the body are either twisted up or contorted, or they get kinked up, and also how it affects our chakras, our energy centers, moving up through the spine, and how our primal life force gets either blocked or where the kinks come in. And when I say kinks, like it's literally like a hose pipe that gets kinked, and then from those kinks we get into kink, right? Like the sexual kink. And I've been watching this time and time and time again, how people who have a lot of kinks in their sexual history and in their energetic system find the path of kink or BDSM to help them kind of heal, or even just to fill that void or craving or that desire that they have kind of trapped inside of them.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be healing, I suppose, to experience it in that way, or it can be re-traumatizing.
It's both. I think that people who have a lot of kinks in their system and end up getting into kink, I think they find it deeply satisfying in the sense that normal sex or kind of consensual love relationships don't really do it for them, because they're wired differently. Like the way that they've been hooked up to their life force has been through a kind of distortion or a very strong event that occurred. And so then we see these perversions. You know, like if I lived in Japan for a number of years, and I was really quite surprised at how perverse the culture is and how accepting of the perversion that the culture is. And I think I've mentioned it before on an earlier podcast, but one of the things that you notice the second you land in Japan is the schoolgirls, right? So there's this massive schoolgirl fetish because they wear uniforms to school, and the high school girls, they will hike their skirts up so they're barely covering their backside. You know, it's just so short. And in the subways, you know, you're constantly walking up very steep steps. And so obviously if there's a schoolgirl in front of you with her skirt that short, you can see her panties, right? And it's,
oh goodness,
it's just it's prevalent everywhere. And they wear these really long knee-high socks. So it's like these stockings, like hypersexualized high school girls. And I was asking some of my Japanese friends because I personally felt weird because I couldn't stop staring at how, you know, it was like, why am I looking, you know, here they are walking up in front of me and I can't help but notice that I can see her panties, and like it's somewhat of a turn on. And I was getting all tripped out about it. Like, what's happening to me? And I remember calling my partner at the time and I'm like, I think I'm going to vomit, or I'm feeling so strange because these girls, they're like, what are they provoking, or what is this, what is going on? And then I just started kind of researching it, like what is happening here. And then I found out, you know, through some Japanese friends, that it's very common that these girls, they kind of do that, and they get money from older men to do like sexual favors for them so that they can purchase like Louis Vuitton handbags and super expensive fashion, because they can't, because there's no fashion at school. It's like they're needing to fill this other self-expression thing, and then they're using their sexuality in this way. And
but this isn't the average school
but it's really it's not the average. It's you know, a percentage of the girls are doing this, not all of them obviously. But it's so prevalent that you will see it as a tourist in Japan. You will definitely see it. Like one time I was in the train and there was a girl dressed like that sitting on the floor of her train with her legs open, like eating a lollipop.
Oh, for God's sakes.
Yeah. And I was like, what the hell is going on? She looks like a sex doll or something, but she's childish. You know, she's like in this weird behavior, you know, because in Japan, what's sexy is little girl, like the little girl look. Even older women are trying to look like little girls. It's really strange. And I was like, what is this obsession with the whole schoolgirl thing? And you'll see it like in the magazines and everywhere. You just see this hypersexualized schoolgirl. And you see it in the sex culture here, like people on Halloween, they dress up like the sexy schoolgirl, or they're
But this is, I mean, that whole thing though is so dangerous because I think people in the US are now trying this. Um, you know, there's girls that are trying to do this kind of thing. I think it's much more of a thing maybe in Japan where maybe it could be safer. I don't know if there is such a word as safe with that kind of thing, but there's girls who are looking for that here, and then and they'll attract these very unhealthy people who then pretend that they're going to take care of them, and they do at first, and then the next thing you know, they've manipulated them somehow into some kind of sex trafficking, or it's a slippery slope, right? They start um,
it's soul sucking. I mean, it is completely, like, literally sucking the soul out of the shell. I was able to meet people who've done it. Like, I got so interested in this phenomena because it's so prevalent. Like, I would see it every single day, multiple times a day. It's not like a rare thing. It's a very prevalent, glaring in your face issue that you see walking around Tokyo, and especially Tokyo. Like, the smaller towns around Japan, you don't see it as much, or it's more shocking to see it in those places. But in Tokyo, it's like every day, all day long, you're gonna see it. And there's also love hotels everywhere where you can just take them for the hour. And so I was asking a Japanese girl who did that in high school, why she did it, and what was it about. And she told me she was doing it with her dad's friends. And I was like, did your dad know? It was very disturbing for me to hear that. And I was like, so did your father know you were doing this? And she said, well, they never talked about it, but it was kind of obvious because she would come home with all these fancy handbags, and she really wanted high fashion, $1,000 handbags and shoes that she could never buy and that her dad was never going to buy. And so it was like he just turned a blind eye to it.
Did you happen, I'm sorry, did you happen to know what her sexual imprint was by any chance? I mean, because what's the chance of somebody doing that?
Well, that's what I was like, what's your relationship like with your father? And what I found was that she needed her dad's attention, and her dad was absent and silent and didn't really speak to her and kind of ignored her. And what I found was that, and this is my opinion, completely my opinion of analyzing her situation, but I felt that her father is one of these men who does that. And because he didn't want to do it with his own daughter, he just ignored her. So she started doing it with his friends.
That would make sense.
Yeah, because it's just sort of like a normalized thing that happens, and that they're all sort of seeking daddy's approval. And
Right.
And I met her when she was in her mid-20s. So that had happened to her when, she was in her teens. Like, she was doing that when she was like 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
And yeah, now
I mean, being ignored. Oh, well, that also makes sense. But like, not saying, but being ignored or dismissed or not given any attention. Like, that's a recipe for just seeking attention at any cost. And, any manipulative man who's going to take advantage of someone who is coming of age and may not even be thinking sexually toward him, but what happens when he starts paying attention to her? Oh, you're so special. Oh, I see that you're interested in this. Oh, you're interested in what do you want to do? You want to be a makeup artist? Oh, here, I'm going to make you some business cards, or here's a bunch of, here's a makeup caboodle, or here's some, or just anything people start paying attention, and then they're going to be starving of attention, and then slowly one thing leads to another, and then the next thing you know. And I mean, and then if we want to add on top of that the possibility that her dad was ignoring her because he was so dysregulated that he was off doing God knows what, then that unconscious energy that seeps into the entire energy field of the family. And so then she would be even, at more risk of acting out that way.
Yeah, and she told me that she found out one of her friends was doing that with her dad, and I think that really disturbed her. But what I find, because then her friend was getting more attention from her father than she was, and I think that really kind of tripped her out. And then
her friend was having
did it
sex
with her father.
with
I don't think they had sex, but I think they would give them oral pleasure, and just like in Japan, it's like it's really weird kink. It's like not full blown sex. I mean, I guess it could be, but when they're getting into sex, what I find is then they're in a relationship. Like that's when it's your boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
But this is more like tricks.
Wow. Interesting.
So what I also noticed was that the Japanese don't have the same consciousness around shame that we have here in the West. And I think it's because, at least the girls that I was asking about, I think it's because they don't have the Christian religion basis.
Mm-hmm.
So because I would say like, wow, you were that young and you didn't have any shame, or like you could just do that and that was acceptable and your family didn't care and they just turned a blind eye and they knew, I was asking all those kind of questions. And
right.
Then I realized like they don't have the church, at least the girls I was speaking to didn't have the dogma of church. They were Buddhist.
Mm-hmm.
And more from the like Shinto tradition. So there's no kind of shame around sexual perversions like that. It just kind of was what it was, and people just accepted it as something that happens. And
so it's more out in the open.
Super out in the open. I mean,
out in the open, and they're getting something for it, and they feel some kind of power. Whereas in the United States, it's a big, huge secret, and it's just loaded with shame. And then the person just feels somehow tainted, and then gets into relationships with low self-worth, and then it's just a big snowball, and they're not getting anything.
And here it's called sex work. In Japan, that's not considered sex work. It's just what you're doing. I mean, they're getting gifts from older men who need a thrill.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's vending machines in Japan selling underwear of high school girls, and it's in the train station. It's not like hidden in a sex club.
Right. I think you mentioned that on the last episode. Maybe I don't know. I know we were on this track, but yeah, it's so disturbing. Oh my gosh, I just don't even know what to think or feel about it, because
and it's disturbing for us because of the way we were raised around it. It's not disturbing for them.
Well, and here the whole people being prostituted and all these girls going missing, and the sex trafficking, and they end up being horribly abused. And it just makes me wonder, dare I say, are they better off in Japan? Is that better? I mean, it is. But even though, why is that happening in the first place, outside of the whole parasite thing, which we've talked about in earlier episodes. But again, this Shakti energy.
Well, that's kind of, the point of why I wanted to bring these conversations to the public, because having lived in multiple cultures that are really extreme and very different in the way that they relate to sexuality, and then going through my own healing around my sexuality, healing my shame, and going through all the different relationship experiences that I've had, I'm personally trying to figure out, like, I'm confused, right? Like, where is it all going? And there's this deep desire that I have inside of me to experience a really healthy, loving relationship that's without all the distortions and kinks and toxicity that I feel that all of us carry inside of us. And I keep imagining, like, what would it be like if we didn't have these distortions? And I kept pulling on the strings. You know, when I do shamanic extractions off people or help them clear their energy systems and kind of heal these kinks in their system, I'm pulling on the energetic cords that connect them to these stories and past experiences. And I keep pulling and pulling and pulling. And then I start getting to that parasite again. Like, oh my God, this is extraterrestrial. Oh my God, this is an agenda to enslave us. Oh my God, this dark entity is trying to control all our life force and keep us separated from our true power. And since our true power, our second chakra and our sacral energy and that creative creatrix life force that we carry is where these codes of our being gods and goddesses is stored. So if we had full control over that, we would be living a completely different lifestyle. We would have different types of relationships. I'm curious what that looks like. And I'm so dedicated to wanting that experience for myself that I'm not settling for anything that can't work towards that goal, you know?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And even just something like, having so much secret um, around, like, if, like, in my family, there was molestation, not for my father, but there was molestation that occurred, and it was a secret. And I think, to some degree, as a grown up, I think that there's a certain amount of comfort that I have with secrets, or with something secretive, or having a secret. And I wonder if, people,
That's a big one.
yeah. And I think, you think about the amount of people that this happens to. I mean, it's just staggering, right? I mean, it's so 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 many people have had something like that, some kind of secret. And then we wonder why, so many people are, let's say, having affairs, or having, I mean, some of that is, a need to feel alive, and there's that whole thing, and that's a whole other podcast. But what about the part what about the people who are serial, let's say, cheaters, right? Serial, where they don't just have an affair or so, but it's just has to constantly be going. And again, I don't know if that's just a United States thing, because here it's not acceptable, but yet, what, 60% of, or more, wait, it's way more, I'm going to have to look that up, but it's way more, people have had affairs in their marriages. And it probably about the same amount of people who've had secrets growing up.
Yeah. And I think that's, coming back to the sexual imprint, the secret. So if you were raised in a household that had a lot of secrets, especially around sexuality, then you're going to be wired for that kind of turn on. Like you might need a secret in order to be turned on.
Right.
That's an imprint wiring. Or if you were a little girl and being molested by your father, then you're going to have this daddy fetish. You're going to want and so many people have it. I mean, Jesus, it's completely normalized now to say he's my sugar daddy, or calling your husband your old man, and you know, the whole play out that happens in the bedroom around being daddy.
Right.
Yeah, that's a complete imprint. People don't just come up with that if they haven't had an excitement for it early on. Like someone who's never had that turn. So that first orgasm is what's wiring that desire, or those very informative orgasms. Like, so,
right. I'm thinking we're out of time for this episode.
Well, I want to add one last thing for those who are listening and are curious about what their sexual imprint might be. Think about what it is that you fantasize about when you're masturbating or alone. The things that you hope no one else knows that you're doing. And so that's for women and men. But I think for guys, it's like what kind of porn you're attracted to. Because I think men tend to be more porn watchers. It's not totally true, but like there's a lot that you're going to see your imprints coming up in those hidden fantasies that you probably don't speak about, or maybe you've been exploring them. And if you can take some time to bring that into a meditation with a lot of love and care, and sit with them and see if, you know, what's there to be healed, what's there to be restored, because that's where the parasite got hooked. And that's what we're wanting to sort of unhook and restore love at that original wound point. Exactly. And if you want help with that, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Satya. You know, find us on our webpage. Find us on social media, lovesexagenda.com, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. Thanks for listening. I hope it was informative.
Yeah, thanks. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you'd like to contact us and stay in touch with us, you can find us at lovesexagenda.com. That's lovesexagenda.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda. Bhargo devasya dhimahi